Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Kerbal Space Program, where we are going to Minmus, again, to try and make some more money. There's an unfinished rover out here that appears to be chilling, having a good time on this hillside and slowly drifting its way down. We need to get this thing online and repaired so that it can go to its destination and complete the science over at that pink zone. Basically, it doesn't actually really need repaired, I guess. This is something I learned in hindsight. It just needs someone to go over there and turn on the solar panel so it has power. That's basically the main crux of the problem with that rover. But, you know, that's what needs to get done. So we're going to be building a new lander today. This is the lander MK2. We're going to be using the new lander module LEM kind of thing here. That's kind of a little bit more reminiscent of a traditional lunar lander that we as Americans have used in the past. And I'm actually going to try and get this thing to have enough energy to land and do its double staging. This one might end up going to the moon at some point also. And the nice thing about this double crew lander is that we can bring a pilot and a scientist along, or a pilot and an engineer along, depending on what we need to do. So today we'll be bringing a pilot and engineer that will kind of fix a lot of the problems on that lander. And I'm going to be modeling this very much in the same way as the last lander. I really like having that lower plate get left behind because, you know, being able to jettison weight on landers is super nice when it comes to ascending back up. You're basically bringing a smaller and lighter craft with you, which is always good. And my favorite connector to use is this just kind of circular strut. And the reason I like it so much for landers is that it's see-through. It's got that good orange color. I always like the good industrial orange colors. And I can kind of cram things inside of it and have it be more of a visually pleasing and functional item in the game. So look at that. We get our fuel tanks in there. They're all tucked inside. They look pretty good. Unlike the last lander, where the main engine of the lander is actually pointing directly beneath the kind of craft, these are having side engines on the upper stage and bottom facing engines on the lower stage. So we shouldn't get any interference in terms of that kind of lander functionality there. My biggest problem with this lander is the shroud that comes out from this. I wish I could hide that shroud and get rid of it in a big way so that it can look a little bit more industrial and raw. That's kind of what I would like to see. We're gonna have 4 landing legs on it. We're also, you saw us earlier, packing a few solar panels and a repair kit in case that's required. The solar panels would be there in case I need to give it a little bit of power initially before we're able to extend the solar panels themselves. And at this point, I'm kind of realizing, well, you know, if I want this thing to land on the moon, I need to start considering making this a little bit more powerful of a bottom stage. And so that's why we are trying to fit in these extra fuel tanks in the bottom. These 4 engines that we're using is definitely plenty for sure on there. And we're going to just load up our Minmus lifter MK1, take off the old lander, and then go ahead and merge this one on here. Now the problem with this is you can see one of the fuel lines did not like that because we have merged parts together. That's kind of what you run the risk of. And now I've gotten a donut stuck in the side of my lander completely. And this, these type of things, you know, merging parts together, while really cool, it's sometimes not the easiest things to work with, because as you can see, even though the kind of strut is a kind of clear item, I actually can't click the object that's stuck inside of it. So I decide to try reloading it, see if it still keeps that fuel tank issue. And it does, of course it does. And it's gonna get to a point where it's almost too much trouble to sit there and try and worry about how this thing is kind of sticking together and the fuel flow of that. And I end up going with a little bit more of a traditional solution, though not without first testing this, because obviously if this separates and explodes, then we have problems. We're just going to tack on a drone onto it, so it does have enough thrust to lift off on Kerbin, and then we can actually take it off too from its landing pad. So that's really cool. I really just enjoy having that two-stage lander, the descent and ascent, kind of separate. After that test, I have realized, and this is why we do tests, that the limb doesn't really have a good roll authority at all. And we're going to put a little bit of control authority on there for ourselves, and a battery pack, because that's going to chug some more energy when we do that. So here, this is us fixing the fuel tanks, and instead of having that weird piping issue, we're going to just simply have more of a solid attachment point for our rocket engines on the bottom, and that'll give us enough fuel. So we end up with like 1400 total delta V on the bottom stage, which I think is going to be enough for us to get to the moon eventually. I'm just going to make sure that the piping is set up correctly here, though it kind of appears that it's already kind of sharing everything on the stage, and I don't have to do any piping, which is kind of nice. The 4 engines will hopefully give us a good amount of thruster control for sure, and just got to make sure that we are not bringing any extra mono propellant on this craft either, because we just don't want the extra weight of a fuel system that we won't be using. So we'll retract the landing gear. The rocket is set up, it's good to go, looking nice and clean, and it's just a simple swap out mission. When it comes to here, I do want to see if there's a way to set up a timer to other locations. So here we are setting up and looking at our alarm clock that we have. Our first window seems to be a MOHO intersect, or window of launch, and then a Joule window. So those will be kind of our first interplanetary missions that we do here on the channel. Those will probably be probes that get sent out there. So we're gonna launch Valentina and Bill up and away. This rocket for us has just been such a good performer, you know. Very traditional, solid looking rocket. It can rotate over here at about 2500, and then we just follow this kind of nice burn pattern, trying to get as much speed as possible, maybe even point towards the moon a little bit on the horizon. I did not look, because I'm just an awful mission control kind of guy. I did not look at all to see if we have a good intersect with Minmus, because I think I wanted to try to use the new maneuver module that we kind of unlocked recently. And that maneuver module is a you have to be in like a circular orbit for it to start calculating roughly your timing of things. Okay, super important that can happen. So we got our apoaps coming up there. I ended up kind of cruising a little bit differently, and I think that kind of paid off on this rocket. The whole first big skipper engine took us all the way to just direct orbit around Kerbin, which was pretty amazing. So at this point, our orbit is not quite round enough for us to calculate anything over to Minmus, so we're going to round it out as much as possible. You know, I don't really care too much about it at this stage. And then we're going to do a Minmus, and we're going to hit a create. Now, At this stage, I did not realize that this is going to be like a T-5 day sort of thing, so I did not like that. So we're just going to do it manually. You know, I don't want to have our pilot and engineer out there just chilling in space needlessly. Granted, we don't have the food or water mod installed, so, you know, we could definitely leave them out there technically forever if I wanted to. We get some nice good shots of Kerbin in the background there as we burn kind of to the north, get our orbits to match. We recreate the maneuver node, see if that changes anything. It really kind of doesn't. The moon becomes a little bit of an issue. And so instead, what I do is I just burn on out to Minmus and then adjust the maneuver node itself on my current orbital plane to change my launch window. And using that, we can actually get pretty close to Minmus here in just this single orbit. We're not going to spend days out here. There's just no need. The launch window for Minmus does not need to be perfect and exact, which it seems like the maneuver tool kind of forces you to do. So we're just going to do a quick little burn here. 500 meters a second, though, you know, that's going to just take up that whole upper stage. And then we'll be left with the command stage and the lander at this point. And the command stage will be what we use to kind of circularize around Minmus. We could use it to get back from Minmus, of course. And I think it'll be a good little trip. Here we go, checking the timers of things, seeing how all that, make sure that's all cleared up, that we're not going to get any weird distractions. And at this point, there's our satellite network that we launched previously around Minmus. Good to see you guys. We're going to warp closer to Periaps here, so that when we burn, it'll be a little bit more efficient. And we'll just go ahead and drop into a nice circular orbit around Minmus. And then we can start planning out the landing trajectory on how we want to do this. We're going to bring the Periaps down, to about 100,000 kilometers. Adjust the orbital plane a little bit, make it a little bit more usable for the location of the rover at that point too. I think. Actually, no. I guess I skipped that. Guess it wasn't super necessary. We'll first circularize our orbit, I guess, completely. About 100,000 to 100,000. Totally cool. And on the swing over, we'll just go ahead and do our descent and maybe adjust the orbit a little bit. Do a couple maneuvers here. Try and get something a little bit more accurate. You know, playing around with maneuver nodes, I think is super, it's kind of fun, honestly. You learn a lot about orbital mechanics just by playing the game. It's not like something I can explain to you all very well, obviously. It's not my area of expertise. To me, I'm playing a video game right now. So we'll go ahead and burn there. We'll make sure their parachutes are stowed and good to go. We'll move the crew over to the lander. Get that in a nice stationary position. Open the antenna for the command module. Make sure we got the comm connection. We will undock the lander. And at this point, we'll point retrograde. We'll turn on our engines, and there she goes. Our whole engine lower stage is gone, just like that. Big ol' oopsie just happened, and no bueno. No bueno at all. So we'll go ahead and turn on our little engines. We're going to redock. And the reason I want to redock is that this does have some fuel left in it. And I decided I did not want to abandon this mission. So we're going to refuel as much as we can from the lander. We're going to throw it back into orbit. Move the crew back around. Throw that out there. Realize at this stage that I have forgotten the cargo that's on there. That's kind of important. Oh my lord. Like, yeah. Okay, so one satellite, one solar ray. Good job, Uthris. You passed the target now. Now you have to turn around, and you have to go back and forth and try and fiddle with this dance in space to try and fix up your blunder. But we have 2,000 meters a second of delta V, which I think is going to be plenty for us to run over the lander. Of course, we're doing some very beautiful tactical things, very sound decisions that we're making here. We're going to burn a little bit to the south as we lower our periaps down. There we go. Make sure we set the lander as a target at some point too. We'll burn more south again. Try and bring that to where we get a decent intersect with the lander. Okay, good. A little bit of the rotation of Minmus does help us get there. Burn south a little bit more again. And now you can see my retrograde marker is pretty well lined up with our retrograde target marker there. And all you got to do to land at a location at this point is try and get your retrograde marker to kind of follow along vertically up the orbital ball here to, or nav ball, I guess is technically its proper term. We just have to follow that up, and when we're ready, cancel our vertical velocity, or not vertical velocity, horizontal velocity, pretty much near it. Follow it, follow it, follow it, and you know, obviously, if I line up to it too early, I'm going to have to get that to carry on a little bit more. We're not quite over the target, so if you just point, you know, a little bit more vertically, you can elongate your arc as we go down here. Now, this thing doesn't have landing gears. I'm really just hoping that we can land on the engine bays softly enough. And from like a total, you know, delta V loss, you know, it's only like 400, 500 delta V to get down here on a nice smooth landing, and we tip over. Of course we tip over. This mission is going the best it can ever be, in my opinion. So that lander is just sliding its way down the hill. Obviously it spawned here from the mission, so it's going to have to settle for a second, I think. We'll come over this way. There we go. We will open up its communications and its own solar panels, which might be enough for us to take control. It is. Now this thing is on Minmus. Rovers on Minmus, everyone, not very good. Minmus rovers are just not very good. You honestly rather just have a actual like little rocket, honestly. Because of the gravity is so low, the traction on your wheels just doesn't matter. You can't really get up to speed. You can't stop very well. But nonetheless, we are going to cruise on over to our destination to complete this little mission. And when we try and stop, we end up, you know, kind of taking off just from the friction of the brakes happening there. So we'll go ahead and stop. We've reached it. We have moved the rover. We can leave it there, all hunky-dory. We transmitted the science from the rover too. So at this stage, we'll just pop back into the rocket, see if we can't stand it up. Oh boy. All right, now I'm tumbling around. Awesome. Awesome, awesome. I'm having like weird camera issues, I think, at this point, for some reason. And now we'll just stand the rocket up using the great power of gyros and do a little bit of a launch here. We got 1,700 total delta V left, which is going to be plenty to take us all the way back to Kerbin. So we're going to launch a nice kind of west to east direction. Go straight out until we no longer orbit Minmus. Very good. There goes the unfinished lander, which I think I'm switching back to transmit all that science. So not only do we get some money, we do get to use the lander that we are repairing to transmit back some data. Okay. Looking at the results of the mission there, and then we just return back to Kerbin. Nice and safe like. No issues. We're not going to return at like a nice, you know, steep angle that we have in the past that we're known for, apparently. But we'll just get our periaps down to the standard 30,000, which is, in my opinion, all you need to get captured into the Kerbal atmosphere at this point. Minmus catches up to us and passes us. We'll spin this vessel around, and we will even maybe start burning, or will we ditch it? I think I ditch it, yes. So that's what happens there. We'll point retrograde, make sure that we have plenty of electrical charge in a blader. That's going to burn off here. And we're actually going to land near a river and lake, which I have never really been in this side of the planet too much. So, hey, that's a new little landing spot. But as we float down here, I think we're going to go ahead and end this episode of Kerbal Space Program. Another successful mission for Valentina and Bill. So, yeah. Next time, we are going to hopefully talk a little bit more about interplanetary missions, and potentially, now that we have enough money, maybe even get us on our own way on one here soon. So if you guys want to see more Kerbal Space Program, feel free to subscribe for more creative goodness such as this. Hit that like button, and we'll see you all in the next episode.